It started with a sound Princess Catherine was never supposed to hear, a faint mechanical click hidden beneath the silence of Louis's private sitting room. At first, aides dismissed it as faulty wiring inside Adelaide Cottage. But within hours, security officers were rushing through corridors, phones were confiscated, and one senior palace insider reportedly uttered a chilling phrase: "This changes everything." What Catherine allegedly discovered inside Prince Louis's room has now plunged Kensington Palace into one of its darkest crises in years. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Reports suggest the unsettling moment happened during what was supposed to be an ordinary evening inside Adelaide Cottage. The future queen, according to palace whispers, had been checking on Prince Louis before retiring for the night when she allegedly paused after hearing an unusual mechanical sound coming from somewhere near the young prince's study area. At first, those nearby reportedly believed the noise came from a defective electronic outlet or one of the cottage's aging security systems. But Catherine, inside, Miters claim, immediately sensed something was wrong, and according to sources familiar with the incident, the expression on her face changed almost instantly. Within minutes, discreet messages were reportedly sent through private palace communication channels. Security personnel arrived without announcement. Corridors inside parts of Adelaide Cottage were quietly sealed. Household staff members who had been preparing to leave for the evening were suddenly instructed to remain inside the residence. Phones, according to multiple royal insiders, were temporarily collected for what was described as a security preservation protocol. That alone was enough to alarm veteran aides who had served the royal household for years, because such measures are reportedly reserved only for situations considered extremely sensitive. And then came the discovery that changed the atmosphere entirely. Various interpretations of the incident suggest a concealed recording device was allegedly located near an area frequently used by Prince Louis during private study sessions and family downtime. Some reports claim the device was hidden with disturbing precision, positioned carefully enough that an investigator could find it. RS immediately ruled out the possibility of a random intrusion. One insider reportedly described the atmosphere afterward as ice-cold panic. Another claimed senior protection officers feared the implications went far beyond a simple breach of privacy. Prince William, according to palace administrative whispers, was informed almost immediately behind closed doors. And while Kensington Palace publicly maintained complete silence, insiders claim the Prince of Wales arrived visibly shaken before disappearing into a private security briefing that reportedly lasted deep into the night. Staff members allegedly noticed unusual movement across the residence shortly afterward, with additional royal protection officers stationed near private family quarters until dawn. Even longtime employees were reportedly left confused by the sudden escalation. But what truly intensified speculation was the silence that followed. Media insiders claim palace communications suddenly became unusually restricted. Scheduled calls were reportedly canceled. Briefings disappeared. Certain aides allegedly stopped responding entirely to trusted royal correspondence. For journalists familiar with the rhythms of Kensington Palace, the abrupt shutdown reportedly felt deeply abnormal. One royal commentator even noted that the atmosphere resembled the kind of internal lockdown, usually associated with national-level security concerns rather than domestic household issues. Behind the scenes, household staff were reportedly subjected to urgent questioning. Sources suggest investigators examined access logs, maintenance schedules, and private movement records connected to Adelaide Cottage over several weeks. Some aides were allegedly questioned multiple times as officials tried to determine who may have entered restricted areas without detection. The tension reportedly became so intense that even senior courtiers began avoiding casual conversation in shared corridors, fearful that every interaction might suddenly fall under scrutiny. And through it all, Catherine herself reportedly remained deeply unsettled. Those close to palace operations claim the princess became intensely protective of all three children almost overnight. One insider alleged she refused to leave Louis unattended at any point during the following days. Another claimed William and Catherine quietly reviewed personal security arrangement. Jewelry usually handled entirely by royal protection teams. Because according to growing whispers within royal circles, investigators had already begun considering a terrifying possibility that the device may not have been newly placed at all. But the hidden device itself was only the beginning, because investigators soon uncovered signs that someone may have been watching the young prince for weeks. By sunrise, Kensington Palace no longer resembled a royal residence, it resembled a fortified command center. Security teams moved in silence, electronic sweeps reportedly stretched across multiple rooms, and longtime staff members found themselves abruptly locked out of private corridors. Whatever had been discovered near Prince Louis was now being treated as something far more dangerous than a simple breach of privacy. As dawn settled over the palace grounds, insiders claim an atmosphere of quiet panic had already taken hold behind the walls of Adelaide Cottage. Reports suggest senior royal protection officers began operating under emergency containment procedures usually reserved for direct threats against senior members of the monarchy. The response was swift, clinical, and deeply unsettling. Corridors that had once echoed with the ordinary rhythm of household life reportedly became restricted zones overnight. Security personnel moved from room to room carrying specialized scanning equipment, while private staff members waited anxiously for instructions that never seemed to come. What alarmed many within the royal household was not simply the scale of the investigation, but the secrecy surrounding it. According to sources familiar with palace operations, even some senior aides were allegedly denied access to internal briefings. Staff keycards were reportedly suspended without warning, while security officials quietly reviewed digital entry records stretching back several weeks. One insider claimed longtime employees suddenly found themselves questioned about seemingly insignificant details, delivery schedules, maintenance requests, forgotten corridor movements. Every interaction was reportedly being re-examined through the lens of suspicion, and at the center of it all stood Catherine. Those close to the Princess of Wales claimed the discovery inside Prince Louis's room had shaken her far more deeply than palace officials initially realized. Reports suggest Catherine, MIA, became intensely protective in the hours that followed, allegedly refusing to allow Louis to sleep alone afterward. Sources whisper that she remained awake late into the night near the children's private quarters while additional protection officers monitored movement across the residence. What may have first appeared to outsiders as a security scare was, within palace walls, beginning to feel frighteningly personal. But the fear spreading through Kensington Palace was not limited to concerns about hidden surveillance devices alone. According to growing whispers from royal insiders, investigators had allegedly begun considering the possibility that private family conversations may have been compromised. That realization reportedly transformed the crisis entirely. Because if discussions involving William, Catherine, or even the children themselves had somehow been recorded, the implications for the monarchy could become catastrophic. Questions quickly began surfacing behind closed doors. Who had access to Louis's private quarters? Who could move through Adelaide Cottage without attracting suspicion? And perhaps most disturbingly of all, how long had the device allegedly remained unnoticed? Sources familiar with the investigation claim electronic sweeps soon expanded far beyond the original discovery site. Multiple rooms were reportedly scanned, including private family spaces rarely accessed even by senior household personnel. Some insiders alleged security teams focused particular attention on communication systems and hidden transmission signals, fearing the possibility that information may have already been extracted remotely. The deeper officials looked, the more intense the atmosphere reportedly became. Veteran royal correspondents soon began drawing comparisons to some of the monarchy's most uncomfortable historical scandals. Memories of leaked phone calls, tabloid intrusions, and past surveillance controversies reportedly resurfaced among palace staff already rattled by the situation. One former royal aide allegedly described the mood as a return to the palace paranoia of another era. Because within royal history, breaches of privacy have often carried consequences far beyond embarrassment. They have destroyed trust, fractured relationships, and fueled public crises capable of lingering for years. Meanwhile, Prince William was reportedly growing, increasingly frustrated behind the scenes. Insiders claim the future king demanded constant updates as investigators worked to piece together a timeline of events surrounding the device's discovery. But according to palace whispers, that timeline soon began revealing troubling inconsistencies. Certain access records allegedly failed to align. Movements inside Adelaide Cottage reportedly raised fresh questions. And while officials continued working in silence, one terrifying possibility slowly began to emerge from the shadows. Yet the deeper investigators looked, the more unsettling the timeline became because evidence reportedly pointed to someone inside the royal orbit. The greatest fear inside any royal household is not intrusion from the outside but betrayal from within. And according to whispered palace accounts, that fear is now consuming Kensington Palace. As investigators traced movements, schedules, and access logs, attention reportedly shifted toward individuals trusted by the family themselves. What had begun as a disturbing security breach was now evolving into something far more poisonous. Inside palace walls, insiders claimed suspicion was spreading quietly from office to office, corridor to corridor, infecting relationships that had once operated on years of loyalty and silence. Security teams reportedly intensified their investigation by examining staff schedules, reviewing maintenance logs, and cross-checking private movements throughout Adelaide Cottage with almost surgical precision. No one, according to sources familiar with the process, was automatically excluded from scrutiny anymore. That realization alone reportedly sent shockwaves through the household. For decades, the modern monarchy has survived not only through ceremony and tradition, but through trust. Trust between royals and staff. Trust between protection officers and private aides. Trust that the people operating behind the scenes understood the sacred boundary between public duty and personal family life. But now, according to palace whispers, that invisible foundation was beginning to fracture. Because if someone within the royal orbit had truly planted or enabled the hidden device near Prince Louis, then the threat was no longer external. It was already inside the walls. Reports suggest long-serving aides were privately questioned behind closed doors as investigators work to reconstruct the movements of everyone with authorized access to the residence. Some employees allegedly faced repeated interviews while officials quietly examined years of internal protocols. One insider claimed certain staff members suddenly became withdrawn and fearful, worried that innocent mistakes or forgotten details could place them under suspicion. Another described the atmosphere as psychological warfare in slow motion, where every interaction carried tension and every silence felt dangerous. And at the center of the growing storm stood Prince William. Sources close to palace operations claim the future king became increasingly furious as the possibility of an internal breach gained credibility. William, according to whispered accounts, reportedly viewed the situation not simply as an invasion of privacy, but as a direct violation of his family's safety. Insiders allege his frustration deepened with every new revelation investigators uncovered. Access records, timing inconsistencies, gaps in security oversight. The pieces, while still incomplete, were beginning to form a deeply troubling pattern. Catherine, meanwhile, reportedly shifted into what one palace insider described as total maternal protection mode. Those close to the household claim she became noticeably more guarded around George, Charlotte, and Louis in the days following the discovery. Sources whisper that routines inside Adelaide Cottage quietly changed almost overnight. Private family areas were allegedly monitored more heavily, while certain members of staff reportedly found their responsibilities suddenly restricted without explanation. Behind closed doors, the Princess of Wales was said to be deeply shaken by the realization that someone may have gained access to moments involving her children that were never meant to leave the safety of their home. But perhaps the most chilling development came from rumors surrounding what investigators may have already uncovered. According to growing speculation among royal commentators, fears began emerging that confidential footage or recordings could already exist somewhere beyond palace control. Reports suggest security officials quietly explored the possibility that private family conversations may have been captured unknowingly over an extended period. That possibility reportedly transformed anxiety into outright fear, because on the monarchy, information has always carried extraordinary power. A single recording, a single leaked conversation, a single humiliating moment exposed to the public could ignite a scandal capable of shaking the institution itself. Royal observers soon began comparing the crisis to some of the monarchy's darkest internal betrayals. Memories of leaked tapes, fractured family relationships, and damaging disclosures from past decades resurfaced once again. Commentators whispered about the painful pattern that has haunted the House of Windsor. For generations, the idea that the gravest wounds inflicted upon the crown rarely come from strangers, but from people once welcomed into its confidence. And as investigators continued pulling at threads hidden beneath palace routines, an even darker question slowly began taking shape behind closed doors. Because if the device had truly been placed deliberately, if the positioning had been intentional, then perhaps the objective was never random surveillance at all. But while suspicion spread through palace corridors, an even darker question began haunting investigators: what exactly was the hidden camera meant to capture? It was not the size of the hidden device that terrified palace officials, it was its location. Reports suggest the camera had allegedly been positioned with a direct view toward areas Prince Louis regularly used during private family hours. And suddenly, the crisis transformed from a security breach into something deeply personal. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the realization reportedly landed inside Kensington Palace with devastating force. Investigators allegedly concluded that the placement of the device could not have been accidental. It was not hidden in a public corridor. It was not positioned near an exterior entrance or administrative office. Reports claim it faced an area closely tied to Prince Louis's daily private life, a space associated not with royal duty, but with ordinary family moments meant to remain protected behind palace walls. And for Catherine, insiders whisper, that distinction changed everything. Those close to the Princess of Wales claim the emotional impact became visible almost immediately. Catherine, who has spent years carefully shielding George, Charlotte, and Louis from the harsher machinery of public life, was reportedly devastated by the possibility that deeply private family interactions may have been observed without consent. Palace insiders suggest the discovery struck at the very heart of her role as a mother. The monarchy, for all its grandeur and protocol, has always depended upon maintaining a fragile line between public visibility and private sanctuary. And now that sanctuary reportedly felt shattered, whispers from within royal circles claim the atmosphere inside Adelaide Cottage grew heavier with every passing hour. Conversations became shorter. Doors remained closed longer. Staff members reportedly spoke in lowered voices, aware that the crisis had evolved into something far more emotionally dangerous than a routine security breach. Because according to growing fears inside the palace, investigators could no longer rule out the possibility that intimate family moments, conversations between William and Catherine, interactions involving the children, ordinary private routines may have been recorded unknowingly, and that possibility carried terrifying consequences. Reports suggest Prince William responded with controlled but unmistakable fury behind closed doors. One insider claimed the future king demanded total accountability as security officials briefed him on the expanding implications of the investigation. Another source alleged William became increasingly determined to identify not only who placed the device, but whether any information had already been transferred beyond palace grounds. Because within the modern monarchy, privacy is no longer merely personal, it is strategic. A single compromised recording could become ammunition for blackmail, exploitation, or public humiliation on a global scale. Royal aides, according to insiders, reportedly began discussing worst-case scenarios almost immediately. Could confidential family conversations somehow surface publicly? Could manipulated footage appear online? Could sensitive material involving the royal children become the target of extortion attempts? Those questions, whispered quietly behind palace walls, reportedly transformed anxiety into genuine institutional fear. The crown has weathered scandal before, but this crisis touched something even more fragile: the safety of the next generation. At the same time, discussions surrounding cybersecurity and modern surveillance vulnerabilities reportedly intensified throughout royal operations. Sources familiar with palace administration claim officials quietly consulted external specialists regarding hidden transmission technology, encrypted data transfers, and weaknesses within existing residential protection systems. Because as unsettling as the discovery itself had been, investigators were reportedly becoming increasingly alarmed by how sophisticated the operation may have been. If the device had remained undetected for an extended period, then deeper security flaws might already exist within the monarchy's most protected spaces. Senior courtiers, according to palace whispers, eventually briefed King Charles privately on the escalating situation. Insiders claim the king was deeply disturbed by reports surrounding the alleged targeting of Prince Louis and the broader implications for the family's safety. Though Buckingham Palace maintained complete public silence, sources suggest private concerns spread rapidly among senior royal figures as details continued emerging behind closed doors. But perhaps the most chilling realization of all was beginning to form quietly beneath the surface of the investigation. Because the more investigators examined the device, the more the questions emerged about timing, access, and possible coordination. Some insiders reportedly feared the operation displayed a level of familiarity with palace routines that could not easily be explained away. And as panic spread through royal circles, another revelation reportedly sent shockwaves through the institution. This may not have been an isolated incident. Behind palace gates, whispers reportedly turned toward an unthinkable possibility. What if Prince Louis was not the first royal child targeted? Old security concerns, forgotten incidents, and long-buried warnings suddenly resurfaced, painting a chilling portrait of vulnerabilities inside the monarchy itself. As investigators dug deeper into the hidden camera scandal, sources claimed the inquiry began reaching far beyond Adelaide Cottage. What initially appeared to be a single disturbing discovery was now allegedly opening doors to older incidents many inside royal circles believed had long been buried. Security advisors, according to palace whispers, quietly started revisiting unresolved anomalies stretching back years, small breaches, unexplained technical irregularities, moments that once seemed insignificant but suddenly, carried a far darker meaning. And that realization reportedly unsettled Kensington Palace more than anyone wanted to admit. Because the House of Windsor has always existed under intense scrutiny. For generations, the monarchy has lived inside a permanent storm of fascination, obsession, and intrusion. But insiders now claim fears were growing that modern surveillance technology had created a threat unlike anything previous royal generations faced. Cameras no larger than buttons, hidden audio devices disguised inside ordinary household objects, encrypted transmissions impossible to detect without specialized sweeps. What once belonged to the world of espionage and intelligence operations had now reportedly entered the private spaces of royal family life. Former staff members, according to several royal commentators, allegedly began recalling earlier moments that suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. A strange interference issue dismissed years ago as technical failure. An unexplained security alert that reportedly vanished without formal resolution. Even whispers of unusual contractor access during previous renovations quietly resurfaced among insiders familiar with palace operations. None of it, sources stress, had ever been publicly connected. Yet inside the growing investigation, those scattered fragments reportedly began forming a deeply uncomfortable pattern. Comparisons to past royal privacy scandals soon intensified across media circles despite the palace's continuing silence. Commentators revisited decades of painful history involving intercepted conversations, leaked recordings, and invasive breaches that once shook public confidence in the monarchy itself. But according to several insiders, this situation felt different, more intimate, more dangerous, because it involved the children of the future king directly. One royal observer reportedly described the atmosphere as a collision between old palace paranoia and modern digital warfare. That fear reportedly became especially personal for Catherine. Sources close to the Princess of Wales claim she began quietly pushing for sweeping changes to family protection protocols almost immediately after the discovery. Insiders whisper that discussions emerged surrounding stricter staff vetting procedures, expanded electronic monitoring, and reduced access to private family spaces inside royal residences. According to reports, Catherine's focus had shifted entirely toward shielding George, Charlotte, and Louis from further exposure. Because beneath the public image of calm composure, those close to the household suggest the princess was grappling with a terrifying realization that the protective barrier surrounding her children might never have been as secure as it appeared. Meanwhile, Prince William reportedly became increasingly determined to uncover the full truth behind the operation. Palace insiders claimed the future king rejected attempts to downplay the incident internally, insisting investigators follow every lead regardless of where it pointed. That decision, according to some sources, created growing tension within parts of the royal household already fearful of institutional embarrassment. But William allegedly viewed the situation through a far more personal lens. This was no longer simply about protecting the crown. It was about protecting his family. Outside palace walls, speculation only intensified. The absence of official statements reportedly fueled a wave of media theories, anonymous leaks, and relentless public fascination. Royal correspondents dissected every every cancelled engagement, every subtle change in palace behavior, searching for clues about the scale of the crisis unfolding behind closed doors. And while Kensington Palace continued refusing comment, insiders claim the silence itself was becoming impossible to ignore. Because somewhere beneath the layers of secrecy, investigators reportedly believed they were getting closer to understanding not only how the device had been placed, but who may have benefited from it remaining hidden for so long. But amid the growing chaos, all eyes soon turned toward one man because Prince William's response reportedly changed the atmosphere inside the monarchy overnight. For days, Prince William reportedly remained unusually silent in public. But behind closed palace doors, insiders claim the future king was preparing what one royal commentator described as a full institutional counterstrike. And once he moved, the tone inside Kensington Palace changed instantly. According to palace whispers, the shift began quietly but decisively. Meetings that had once involved routine security discussions allegedly transformed into high-level strategic briefings involving senior protection officers like IC advisors and trusted royal aides. Sources familiar with internal operations claim William became increasingly determined to regain control of a situation that had spiraled dangerously close to undermining the safety of his family. And unlike previous royal crises often softened by delay or diplomacy, insiders suggest the Prince of Wales approached this one with startling directness. Reports claim William ordered an expanded internal security review, stretching beyond Adelaide Cottage itself. Access permissions were allegedly re-examined across multiple royal residences, while protection teams quietly reviewed vulnerabilities tied to staff movement, contractor access, and digital surveillance exposure. Some insiders even whispered about possible reshuffles among senior household personnel, though palace officials refused to comment publicly on those claims. Still, within royal circles, the message reportedly became unmistakable. Trust alone would no longer be enough. And perhaps that was the moment the atmosphere truly changed. Because according to several insiders, William's response was not emotional in the traditional sense. It was colder than that, controlled, focused. Ruthal's, my sly deliberate. One source reportedly described the future king as coldly furious, a phrase that quickly spread through royal commentary circles as speculation intensified around the scale of the palace's internal reaction. Another insider claimed William viewed the situation as a defining test of leadership, believing any hesitation would only invite greater danger moving forward. At the center of his focus, however, remained Catherine and the children. Sources close to the household suggest the Prince and Princess of Wales became more united than ever behind closed doors during the unfolding crisis. Reports claim both parents privately agreed that protecting George, Charlotte, and Louis had to take priority over royal optics, public expectations, or institutional tradition. That reportedly led to dramatic tightening of personal security protocols surrounding the family. Movements became more restricted. Access points were monitored more aggressively. Certain routines involving the children were allegedly altered entirely to reduce predictability. For Catherine, insiders whisper, the emotional strain remained immense. But according to those familiar with the situation, William's increasingly forceful posture behind the scenes reportedly gave the princess a renewed sense of stability amid the chaos. Because while fear still lingered throughout Kensington Palace, the family now appeared determined to confront the threat rather than simply contain it quietly. At the same time, reports suggest palace legal teams were discreetly consulted as investigators continued assessing the broader implications of the hidden device discovery. Questions surrounding privacy law, unauthorized recordings, and potential criminal exposure allegedly became part of ongoing discussions happening far from public view. Royal aides reportedly feared that if footage or audio had already been distributed externally, the monarchy could face not only reputational fallout but legal complications capable of triggering an international media frenzy. And behind it all stood King Charles. Though Buckingham Palace remained publicly silent, insiders claimed the king privately supported decisive action from William as details surrounding the investigation continued emerging. Sources suggest Charles viewed the situation with growing concern, particularly because it involved the safety of his grandchild, children, and the future stability of the monarchy itself. Some commentators even speculated the crisis had quietly accelerated conversations about how the next generation of royals would need to navigate an era defined by digital intrusion, surveillance threats, and relentless public obsession. But despite intensified security measures and the palace's attempt to regain control internally, something else was already happening beyond the gates. The silence, the secrecy, the sudden changes in behavior. They had all begun attracting enormous public attention. Royal correspondents started asking sharper questions. Media outlets chased anonymous sources. Online speculation exploded across international headlines as whispers about the hidden camera scandal spread far beyond London. And with every passing hour, the pressure on Kensington Palace only intensified. Yet even as the palace attempted to regain control, public fascination exploded and the royal family suddenly faced a media storm they could no longer contain. The moment whispers of the hidden camera leaked beyond palace walls, the crisis erupted into global headlines. Television panels speculated wildly, royal experts dissected my very appearance by Catherine and William, and social media descended into chaos. But according to insiders, the real panic was unfolding inside the monarchy itself. Within hours, what had once been a tightly guarded internal investigation reportedly transformed into an international obsession. News outlets across Britain, the United States, and Europe began circulating explosive theories surrounding the alleged discovery inside Prince Louis's private quarters. Commentators debated whether the breach represented simple espionage, targeted surveillance, or something far more coordinated. And because Kensington Palace continued refusing public comment, the silence itself became fuel for even greater speculation. Royal experts suddenly appeared everywhere. Television panels analyzed every detail with relentless intensity. Former palace aides spoke cautiously about historical security failures. Veteran correspondents compared the unfolding scandal to some of the darkest moments in modern royal history. Some claimed the monarchy was facing its most disturbing internal security crisis in decades. Others warned that the public still did not understand the full scale of what may have happened, behind closed doors. With every broadcast, every anonymous leak, every whispered theory, pressure surrounding the royal family only intensified further. But according to insiders, the emotional strain inside Kensington Palace had already reached dangerous levels long before the public frenzy exploded. Sources close to palace operations claimed communications became extraordinarily controlled as officials scrambled to contain the situation. Staff members were reportedly instructed to avoid discussing any aspect of the investigation, even privately. Certain aides allegedly lost access to internal briefing systems entirely, while media teams worked frantically behind the scenes to prevent additional leaks. Yet despite those efforts, speculation continued spreading faster than the palace could suppress it, and at the center of the public fascination stood Catherine. Every public appearance by the Princess of Wales reportedly became the subject of intense scrutiny. Royal watchers examined her facial expressions, body language, and interactions for signs of emotional distress. A brief pause during one engagement sparked endless online discussion. A reportedly subdued expression during an other appearance triggered fresh waves of concern. Commentators debated whether Catherine appeared exhausted, frightened, or emotionally overwhelmed by the unfolding crisis. And while the palace maintained a carefully composed public image, insiders whisper that the reality behind closed doors was far more fragile. Public sympathy for William and Catherine reportedly surged as details surrounding the alleged breach continued circulating. Across social media, many expressed outrage at the possibility that royal children may have been subjected to hidden surveillance inside their own home. Others described the incident as every parent's nightmare magnified under the relentless pressure of global attention. For perhaps the first time in years, widespread public focus shifted away from royal privilege and toward something deeply human: fear for the safety of children. But alongside that sympathy came growing anxiety about the monarchy's ability to protect itself. Reports suggest security fears soon expanded beyond Kensington Palace alone. Questions reportedly emerged surrounding the vulnerability of other royal residences, private offices, and family spaces connected to senior members of the monarchy. If someone had allegedly managed to place a hidden device near Prince Louis without immediate detection, what else might have already gone unnoticed elsewhere? That question reportedly haunted security advisors as they widened internal reviews across multiple royal properties. And perhaps most damaging of all were the growing doubts surrounding trust inside the royal household itself. Because while the palace publicly projected calm authority, insiders claim quiet paranoia continued spreading behind the scenes. Staff relationships reportedly became strained. Long-standing loyalties suddenly felt uncertain. Even routine interactions allegedly carried an undercurrent of suspicion as investigators continued searching for answers. The monarchy has always depended upon discretion and trust operating invisibly beneath its ceremonial image. But now, according to royal commentators, those invisible foundations appeared dangerously shaken. And amid the noise of headlines, speculation, and institutional fear, Catherine herself was reportedly confronting a painful realization she could no longer ignore. Because no matter how many security reviews were launched, or protections heightened, something fundamental had already changed inside Adelaide Cottage forever. And as the palace scrambled to contain the fallout, Catherine reportedly reached a heartbreaking realization her children's world may never feel safe again. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, one image reportedly lingered in the minds of palace staff. Princess Catherine standing silently outside Prince Louis's room long after midnight, unwilling to walk away. Because according to those closest to the family, this crisis was never just about a hidden camera. It was about a mother realizing the walls protecting her children may no longer be impenetrable. Long after the headlines exploded and the speculation consumed international media, insiders claimed the emotional impact inside Kensington Palace remained impossible to erase. Reports suggest the atmosphere throughout Adelaide Cottage changed permanently in the weeks following the discovery. Familiar routines reportedly became more guarded. Certain traditions quietly disappeared. And beneath the carefully maintained composure expected from the royal family, sources whisper that William and Catherine were still grappling with the unsettling reality someone had allegedly penetrated the most private corners of their lives. For Catherine, according to palace insiders, the crisis forced a painful reevaluation of what privacy could realistically mean for her children moving forward. The Princess of Wales has spent years attempting to balance royal responsibility with a fiercely protective approach to motherhood. But sources suggest the hidden camera scandal shattered any lingering illusion that royal walls alone could shield George, Charlotte, and Louis from modern threats. What once felt secure now reportedly felt vulnerable. And that realization, insiders claim, cut deeply. Whispers from within royal circles suggest serious discussions quietly emerged surrounding the future public exposure of the royal children. Some commentators claimed William and Catherine began reconsidering long-standing expectations tied to appearances, photographs, and media accessibility. Others alleged stricter limits on private family visibility were already being explored behind closed doors. Because according to sources close to the household, the couple had reached a difficult conclusion. Tradition could no longer come before safety, and for principle, William, the experience reportedly left a lasting mark as well. Insiders claim the future king became increasingly determined to modernize how the monarchy approaches personal protection in an era dominated by surveillance technology, digital intrusion, and relentless public obsession. Reports suggest conversations expanded beyond the immediate investigation itself and toward larger institutional reforms involving cybersecurity, staff oversight, and private residence security systems. Because what happened inside Adelaide Cottage, according to growing fears within the palace, represented more than an isolated breach. It was a warning. Even King Charles, sources whisper, privately supported stronger protections surrounding the Wales family following the crisis. Though the palace never publicly acknowledged the extent of internal concerns, insiders claim the king understood the emotional and symbolic weight of what had unfolded. The monarchy has survived wars, scandals, abdications, and betrayals. But this incident reportedly touched something uniquely sensitive: the safety of the next generation destined to carry the institution forward. Still, while investigations continued questioning, quietly behind the scenes, palace insiders described emotional scars that would not disappear easily. Trust, once fractured, proved difficult to restore. Relationships inside the household reportedly remained strained long after media attention began fading. Some staff members allegedly feared the atmosphere of suspicion would linger indefinitely. Others quietly admitted that the sense of innocence surrounding family life inside Kensington Palace had been permanently altered. And perhaps that became the true legacy of the crisis. Because beneath the headlines, theories, and speculation, the hidden camera scandal ultimately exposed something far larger than a single security failure. It revealed how fragile privacy has become in the modern age, even for one of the most protected families in the world. The monarchy, built upon centuries of ceremony and controlled visibility, now faces dangers that arrive silently, invisibly, and often from places no institution can fully predict. Yet despite the fear, the scrutiny, and the emotional weight of the ordeal, insiders insist William and Catherine emerged from the crisis more united than ever in their determination to protect their children. Or as future royals, not as symbols of the crown, but as a family. Because within the House of Windsor, threats rarely arrive with warning, and sometimes the most dangerous intrusions are the ones hidden quietly behind palace walls. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.